Shalom. Today, on some sort of level, I have completed the Babylonian Talmud. And to celebrate, I had a festive meal, I called some friends, and I'm going to talk about Star Trek because it makes me happy. Now, I had the honor of watching the original series when it was in prime time. It was when I was in college, and I liked the series very much. It was my favorite television program, and I had three other friends, we'd eat lunch together, and they also liked Star Trek very much and watched it. And the day after Star Trek, we would be talking about Star Trek with great pleasure during lunch. And there were other students who liked it too and watched it. Most of them were not that interested in it, but they knew about it. It became a little bit noticeable that we really did like it a lot. It was a case where the people who liked it tended to be the good students, as well as people who were very nice people, and people were happy to be their friends. There was one episode, Amok Time, where the Vulcan salute is introduced. Live long and prosper. And with great joy, we were greeting each other in the hall when we saw it. And the question of LSD came up, where some people claim that this show was all about LSD. I myself considered that to be ridiculous at the time. I was later to find out that it in fact was true. And what they said, there was one show, it was called The Way to Eden. It was one about it had a counterculture plot where you had like a Timothy Leary type figure leading a small group of hippies in like kind of a hippie commune, and they're looking for the planet that's the Garden of Eden, and they eventually land on a planet that seems to be it, and what's all of the plants have acid in it, okay, that it corrodes their feet. And one of them very happily jumps out of the ship, shall we say, and he takes a fruit, and his name was Adam. I think he had an apple, and it was loaded with acid, and he dies. And they said, "Don't eat it. It has acid in it." And my friend said to me, the way they said that, it has to be LSD that they're talking about. And in fact, if you consider the show, it's really all about LSD. And there's one episode in particular, This Side of Paradise, where you have the love and the tranquility and the joy that comes when a person takes LSD. I took LSD in college. I haven't taken it lately. It's extremely illegal. Then I understood it and I could relate to it. It's a case where once your eyes are open to it, then you can see it very clearly, often in all of its forms. Now, saying I was going to list this as my 11 favorite episodes of Star Trek. These were the ones that made a strong impression on me. Now, the first one, which if you're watching Star Trek videos about it, it's always on top. It's almost a stereotype. It's the city on the edge of forever, which is set during the Depression, and Kirk and Spock go back in time, and they meet this woman, Edith Keeler, who is a very saintly woman, and Kirk falls in love with her, but she dies. Now, I could go in. I will discuss this in detail. I remember when I was at college, a friend of mine asked me, "What's your favorite Star Trek?" I said that one without hesitation. The rest of them, some of them are This Side of Paradise, which I mentioned before. Where No Man Has Gone Before. This was one of the pilots where it deals with someone who has this strange experience, and he emerges as a genius because of it. And then they get all sorts of scared at him that they're going to just be considered as irritants and mice, and eventually they kill him. The geniuses are one category of villains on Star Trek. Okay, the Cloudminders, again, another utopian story. Utopia was one of the themes of Star Trek. This one is modeled like as an elitist college, and it also has the major theme, though, seems to be one of kind of race relations, where, you got this kind of snobbish university that doesn't admit blacks who want to really attend. Okay, next one, Mud's Woman. Now, Mud's Woman, it's a romance, and romance is one of the major themes, as I mentioned, with the city on the edge of forever. This one, though, has a lot of comedy associated with it. It's not like The Trouble with Tribbles, which really was a comedy, or I'm Mud, which was largely a comedy, a farce. This one, it has its humorous moments with, you got the swindler and the, I guess it's prostitutes or matchmaker. It's quite humorous in parts of it, but it's largely serious. Now, then you have number 6 is Plato's Stepchildren, and that one is dealing with a corrupt society, social criticism, and mercy. It was notable in that this is the one that has the first interracial kiss in it, where Captain Kirk kisses Uhura, who's black. Okay, and it made a stir at the time, including in my high school when it had. And as soon as he kissed her, I knew that was going to be an issue, and I waited a moment, and then Spock kisses the Earth Girl, and I used that, and I said, "Yeah, that was horrible. How could they show Spock kissing an Earth Girl?" It was at the time when racism was on its way out, but there were certain vestiges of it, including, say, marrying or dating a black openly, that were still not really accepted. Okay, the Squire of Gothos, that's the one with Trelane. Now this one, it starts, when you first see it, you see it as serious. If you see it again and again, it becomes quite comic. Especially you have the scene where Trelane, who we don't know quite what he is, puts Kirk on trial for, among other things, treason to a superior being. And he's also constantly mocking the human race because of its predatory aspects. It's somewhat smart alecky, but once you get the joke, it's quite funny. This side of Armageddon, again, this is one of the ones that is very commonly cited as one of the great Star Treks. This is a very good anti-war one. Mirror, Mirror. Now, this one is often looked at as a comedy, where you have basically Kirk and Uhura and Dr. McCoy, maybe one other, that they go into a parallel universe. One of the people they meet is Spock, but the parallel universe, instead of the characters being good, they're evil. You can say it's like modeled on somebody who's busted and they're taken down to the police station and thrown in jail, seeing the seamier side of Western society. But it's presented in somewhat of a humorous way, where, people are being routinely tortured and that type of thing, your agonizer, please, but what it is dealing with is, it's a major theme there, or two major themes, is the dualism of man, having a good and evil nature, and they're often at odds against each other. Then number 10, I have The Children Will Lead. Again, it's a romance, but it's a virgin romance, pristine, first love. Okay, then Arena. Now that is the one with the Gorn. The Gorn is the alligator-like creature, where it's a lot of physical fighting between him and Kirk, and in the end, Kirk can kill him, but he chooses not to. He has mercy on him. And the mercy, again, is a major theme. And it's these themes, the superiority and excellence of themes, which has given Star Trek its staying power. I didn't think about it at the time when I was watching it, and until very recently, but to say that these are the equivalents of Shakespeare's plays or an American Aeneid is beginning to seem reasonable, and that this conceivably is the equivalent of the great American novel. When it comes to other TV shows, I remember I'd watch 77 Sunset Strip, early 60s, Hawaiian Eye. I don't think I could tell you a single episode from them. Other shows later, Mary Hartman, All in the Family, MASH. I could tell you some episodes, certainly not all of them, and I certainly did not meticulously try to see all of them. In the case of Star Trek, I really worked on seeing all of them, and I saw all of them except one during the regular season. Either I caught it at its time or I caught it on the reruns. The one that I missed was the one where you have, the transporter makes two Kirks, a good one and an evil one, the enemy within. Again, the dualism of man. It bothered me, and I tried to catch it, and I remember during that time that they had the first Star Trek convention, and one of its features is that they would be showing all of the Star Treks, and I considered going just to see that one. I didn't. In fact, what happened is literally 10 years later, in the 80s, when Star Trek went into syndication and repeats, then I caught it, and I caught it a few times. In terms of the Star Trek convention, I remember my friend Mark Jurgraf, who he was one of the people who would watch it, and we'd laugh about it and talk about it over lunch. Other ones, Richie Tenpenny, John Vitriol, high school friends. But remember Mark talking about the convention, and he said, they'll have like artifacts there and teachers, and then he said he talked also after the convention, and one of the things that was surprising was that people came dressed as the characters, which I considered amazing. You had other things also. Remember when I was a college freshman, my preceptor, also a Star Trek fan, also he was into drama. He bought the book, The Making of Star Trek, and he told me to read it. I read a good section of it. I liked it a lot. You also had the Star Trek blueprints later on. Everything I needed to know I learned on Star Trek. Okay, but I'll return to the basic themes. Now, the most pervasive and noticeable themes, for lack of a better ones, were the themes of love and war, which I'll get to discussing, but the second one was Utopia, and that's the one to start off with. And related to that is the idea of genius, which also was close to the idea of higher life forms. So to speak, people who were morally superior. Then you had another three themes that were more subtle, but very important because they made the series extremely penetrating. The dualism of man, and the internal battle between good and evil within a person. You had also the themes of compassion and mercy. And you also had another theme of self-sacrifice. Okay, where you had one who was the empath, where the whole point of this girl's existence was to feel the pain for other people, and even to die. It's a theme in The City on the Edge of Forever. It was also a theme in This Side of Armageddon, where within the context of the war, one of the characters is says that she is willing to walk into a disintegration chamber and be killed because this is what it takes to keep the war down to a manageable level. That's going to be very discredited later on. In one of the show's few nods to religion, Bread and Circuses, which is basically about a 20th century Roman Empire where it has basically Caesar and Christ are undercurrents, and the Christians who are sun worshippers, shall we say. The difference between U and O is critical in that series, but their commitment and their self-sacrifice. Those are the critical themes. Now, looking at Utopia, that one was the strongest one of that I like was This Side of Paradise, where you have the LSD theme, where you have what amounts to an agricultural commune where it's very talented people, but they're staying away from everybody, and they're all very loving, peaceful, happy, and really they want people to join the commune, but you gotta be the right type of person, and it's an aspect of the Timothy Leary advice: turn on, tune in, and drop out, because they have very definitely dropped out. And they're rejected because of that. You also have, this is one of the biases of the show. It's eventually resolved, where they say basically you have to have some evil and some conflict, and the fact that you don't have it is an evil in and of itself. Now, that is kind of resolved in The Cloudminders, which is the story is of a city in the clouds where you have the people who are devoted to academic pursuits, and they're basically supported by the people on the ground, on the surface of the planet, who are essentially like coal miners. They're devoted to mining in horrible conditions. And the ending is very powerful because what it is, it's to a certain extent, it's an allegory of a racist society that thinks it's very well developed, that is exploiting the labor of the blacks. And it's like two girls who focus on those two roles, and they're both problematic, kind of, where the girl on the surface, and it seems trite, it's in the third season, which has a lot of triteisms in it. A lot of those have to be rewritten, where they are breathing the gas in the mines, which makes them dull and violent, and it's known. And the solution is to wear a gas mask, but they refuse to do it. And what happens is eventually they get the idea that really you have to do this, and this is why they're so savage, or one of the reasons. And the powerful thing is that the girl who's head of the agitators, she has a confrontation with the girl who's like the chief major academic, and it turns out that the agitator was her personal servant. And the shall we say mistress says, what is it that you want? Okay? And her attitude is, it has the tone of a high quality publisher who's always looking for material, never really has enough, okay, but gets a lot of junk and can identify it within 2 minutes. And what the girl says is the sunshine and the clean air, and the mistress says, forget it. That's not what this... She's very harsh. She says, you won't make it here. Just like your body isn't accustomed to leisure, your mind is not accustomed to logic. But once the girl who's somewhat of a savage accepts the idea that, you really do have to wear this gas mask, and, that these gases, even though you don't see them, can hurt you, then she is accepted into the higher realms, okay, with great mercy and tolerance. Okay? In that case, you had the Utopia story is resolved. Now you have other ones where it is not, or it's partially resolved. The show grows. You have the one Shore Leave, where they go on to this planet and all of your pleasing fantasies come true. If you think of yourself as a knight in shining armor with the pretty girl wearing the gown, it just pops up. The problem is if you have a bad fantasy, that also shows up. So if you think about this, a plane that's a bomber, okay, the bomber appears, and if you think about it strafing, it strafes. And you have to control your thoughts, which again, it's the idea of LSD. Okay, that you have to know how to handle yourself on an LSD trip, including not letting your bad fantasies get the better of you. You have another one, the Return of the Archons, where you have basically everyone is peaceful and tranquil and happy, but it's a very regimented society. It's like regimented religion, and it has in the end it's run by a computer which has pretensions of perfection. The way they defeat the computer is showing that it can make a mistake. It's a misconception about religion that you think you tell a religious person, well, here's this inconsistency that'll stop being religious. That's generally not true. What they will tell you is that there are many, many inconsistencies, but the good things in it are much more powerful, and you just have to deal with these things as best you can. Now, one that was on the road to acceptance, on the road to the Cloudbounders, is one called I Mud. Now, I Mud was basically a farce. This is where you have Star Trek, to a certain extent, was a comedy. Like the Shakespeare plays, some of them are comedies. This one was basically a comedy where They go down to a planet where you have Roger C. Carmel plays Mud, who's basically a swindler. He's quite funny, very lecherous, and you have all these robots that are just anxious to do his bidding. And what he does is he orders new additional robots, ones that are very beautiful girls. That was one of the things with Star Trek. They liked having pretty girls in erotic outfits. He makes a special robot that's the wife that he has kind of abandoned, where she starts screaming and yelling at him. She's a real shrew. He just says, "Shut up." And the robot just conks out, the android robot. But it's quite funny, among other things that were very farcical in that. However, it's the utopia where they're kind of getting seduced into that, where there's one scene, I think it's with Scotty, where they say, if you're doing research and you want to develop something, we will provide you with the finest craftsmen to follow your instructions, or if you want, you can do it yourself. Okay? The idea is that it's too peaceful, too tranquil, too happy. You gotta be a bit miserable. Okay, that's where you have the dualism of man coming in, that theme coming into play, where that one's basically rejected on that basis. The difference between that and the Cloudminders is that the girl who's accepted, they know she's problematic, okay, and that it's going to be difficult, but that in the end they'll succeed with her, and the striving is through helping and uplifting this individual, as opposed to the striving in pure research, advancement of a person's mind. Okay. You have, now related to this is you have the idea of geniuses, and that is where you have, this was the second pilot where no man has gone before, where you have this man who has this strange experience, also his girlfriend, and they become brilliant, and they continue becoming more brilliant, and then it becomes threatening. They say, gosh, we're just going to be like mice and irritants. That shows up again in other episodes. As a result, he goes bad and does horrible things, and they kill him. But the main problem is he's a genius. There's another one where you have regards to Captain Dunzel. That's the one, the ultimate computer, where they develop a computer that can run the entire enterprise. You don't need a captain, and you don't need much of a crew either, maybe none. And this computer is considered the enemy, and its maker, who's considered brilliant, is considered the enemy. And what happens is the computer in the end doesn't work. And the brilliant man starts flipping out because his computer didn't work. I think they say, what is it? It's, what do you do if your child develops antisocial tendencies? That, this is his brainchild. But you're kind of relieved that, Captain Kirk is still going to be the captain of the Enterprise. He's not going to go to this planet where the robots are going to be working for him. Okay. The other one related to that is the idea of higher life forms. Now, you had the Squire of Gothos, where you have basically this higher life form who's really, in fact, a little boy, and he's interested in predators, especially the predators of the human race and their predators. In the end, his parents come to pick him up before he can do more damage. But where that point is driven home, it's where you have one called the arena. And this one, it has the main theme of it, the overlying theme of it that you notice is a battle between Kirk and an enemy captain of a spaceship, of a starship. And the way it starts is that you have a conflict on the edge of the galaxy where they don't know really what's beyond you. This is the frontier of the Federation of Planets, and they meet another group of people, a group of intelligent beings. They look like alligators, anthropomorphic, and you have a conflict, and it extends into space, and they intrude on another planet, just passing through it, which turns out to be an advanced civilization that they don't really know about it, and it seizes both ships and says, "All right, you want to fight? We're putting you both on this planet, and you'll have your fight. It'll be strength against strength, speed against speed, cunning against cunning." And then you have the two, Kirk and the Gorn, basically trying to kill each other. And in the end, Kirk Fade wounds the Gorn, and he's coming in for the kill. And he stops and he says, "Wait a minute. This was a mistake." He said, "They thought they were being attacked. And this is something for diplomats to resolve." Okay? The idea of a misunderstanding is common, where you have the Federation is always the good guys, and the other guys tend to be the bad guys. They can be equal or less, but they're not greatly evil. So he spears them, and at that point, the civilization that placed him there appears. He's graced with an appearance with them. And they say that we're going to let you resolve this through diplomatic means. The advanced civilization looks like a Greek citizen, Athenian, says that you showed the advanced trait of mercy. So this is what it gives it. It gives it its additional punch, maybe even stronger. And then he says, to your enemy who was helpless, who certainly would have killed you. So they said, we can eventually develop relations with you in 1,000 or 1,500 years. Okay? Don't call us, we'll call you. In this case, the advanced civilization was good. Sometimes it's good. The higher life form, it's typically good. again, it's flirting with religion in this case. But again, this is where the arena is the one I'm using as a bridge to the theme of war. And in the case of war, this is definitely an anti-war show. And the most powerful one about it is this side of Armageddon. The other videos that I've seen this one usually is ranked as one of their favorites, where they go on to this planet where they're having a computer war against another planet, and the guys who are hit by these computer games have to disintegrate themselves, walk into a disintegration chamber, and the computers keep track that nobody's cheating, and the Enterprise is hit, and they don't like this game. But the people on the planet have to throw them into the disintegration chambers. And the only way or the best way they can get out of this mess is to not only destroy the disintegration chambers, but destroy the computer as well. So now you can't run the war this way. And the people there, the chief consul is horrified and outraged at this, and he says they have a confrontation with Kirk where he says to him, you've made war too tolerable. He says, now you have a real war. You have a destruction and disease, because once your opponents see that this is a real war, instead of attacking you with fake weapons, they're going to attack you with real weapons. Or maybe you should attack them first. And he hesitates and pauses and says, well, maybe you said you have a channel. Maybe you should talk to him and see if you can resolve your differences. I'm sure they're as horrified at the prospects of a real war as you are. And what it is it's a Robert E. Lee and Sherman, American Civil War, where after, I think it was the Battle of Gettysburg, Lee looks on, basically a battlefield filled with dead bodies, and he says we should look at this, that we shouldn't become too fond of war, know what it's really about. Or Sherman, I think it's after the Battle of Charlottesburg, or a major battle, where he wins, okay, and it looks like the war, at this point it looks like the North is really going to win the war. But it was an extremely bloody war, and all his troops are celebrating, and he's not. So they ask him about it, and they say, well, he says, a victory that comes over a mountain of dead bodies, I just can't celebrate that. This is the development of that idea. Okay, what you have, again, you have the idea of the dualism of man, and that is the best one that deals with that is, as I said, it's mirror, mirror, where you have, the society, the parallel universe with the corrupt side of shall we say, of Western society. Okay, but you have it in others, the enemy within. Again, the start, this one is about is the transporter makes two Captain Kirks, one of them good, one of them evil. And the good one is very timid. And the evil one starts, among other things, he starts chasing after the pretty yeoman who really likes him, likes Captain Kirk. And before he actually catches her, they solve the problem. They can merge the two of them together, and the yeoman comes to approach Kirk, to take him up on his offer. And at this point, he says, "No, I can't do this. He's not interested." And Spock comments to her that he says the other Kirk had his attractions. That's part of the idea of the dualism of man. There's another one, is the alternative factor, where you have this character. It doesn't have much of a plot, where you have two people that look identical except for the expressions on their faces, and they're constantly fighting each other, and you have the parallel universe ideas introduced in this. And when they're in between these two universes, they come in contact with each other, and they're trying to kill each other. It's a vicious bare knuckle fight. They're trying to strangle each other. It's the visceral hatred between good and evil, and that shows up again throughout the series. You have other ones that are like that. And the theme of compassion and mercy. Now, this is the one where it comes across, at least to me, most strongly. I mentioned it in Plato's, in Arena, but also Plato's Stepchildren, where basically what you have is a society where it's an academic, intellectual society. They're modeled on Greeks and their devotion to knowledge. And there's a dwarf. He's a famous actor at the time, who all of the Greeks have these telekinetic powers, and the dwarf doesn't have them. And it comes out that the Greek types are extremely cruel and twisted and perverted, and they're especially cruel to the dwarf. And in the ending of the show is that the dwarf leaves and he goes with the Enterprise. The people on the Enterprise are in fact kind and accepting to the dwarf. And you have some really brutal scenes where, through their telekinetic powers, they're forcing Kirk and Spock and Uhura, to do some very twisted, distasteful things. And this is the one where it has the interracial kiss, and it kind of puts the audience on the defensive, because having Kirk kiss Uhura, they were breaking a taboo, was breaking down anyway, is portrayed as a perversion. And you don't like that. You don't like them for portraying it that way, even though that's the way people were in the late 60s. You still had some of the really bitter racism. And what you had with Martin Luther King, it was one of the things that won the battle against bigotry. He said, "I have a dream that my children will be judged by the quality of their character, not the color of their skin." And when you were dealing with Uhura as an actress, as the character in the show, she was an intelligent person. And she was also very likable. You could see that, if you met her on the street, she was very nice. You see the interviews she gives later on. She was a very nice person. A very likable character on the show. Also, this was later on in Mirror Mirror, they put her in a halter top. And she's quite shapely and, it's a healthy body. She was attractive, actually. And you have to say that, to portray kissing her as a perversion, that's a perversion in and of itself. But again, it was the focus was the dwarf. That in this also was difficult for the audience to say that you can't hate the guy and mock the guy over this. You have to accept him because he was a nice person as well. And that was part of the mercy theme. You also have a self-sacrifice theme. The empath. Okay, we're also, as I said, this side of Armageddon, where the person is willing to die because of their ideals, at times misguided. Now, this brings us to the theme of love, which is the most strongest one. And this also brings us to City on the Edge of Forever. Now, Star Trek, it turns out it was a show that really was substantially better than other shows. And this episode is really in a class above Star Trek. Before getting into it, talk about what makes this so powerful is, as I said, typically the good people on Star Trek were not greatly good. But in this case, the heroine, the beloved of Kirk, who he falls for, really is a saintly individual. Where you meet her initially is that it takes place during the Depression, and she's basically running a soup kitchen to help people who were very poor and out of work. And she's doing it sincerely. And it's not just a question that just an issue of that she's giving them soup. She's giving them encouragement. There's one scene where she gives a pep talk to the people in miserable shape. She's telling them that you have to keep the faith and to live till tomorrow, and that the days that are coming will be very good days. And she's basically ogled and misunderstood and belittled, but they do accept her. The idea is that she puts up with this, okay, because this is what it's going to take to help these people. Dramatically, it makes use of devices that are also very good, that make you like her. For example, when Kirk and Spock find themselves in these years, in the Depression years, they accept a low-paying job. They're working for coolie wages, and they can they can barely support themselves. In one scene, she knocks on their door, and she tells them about work, and it's at a reasonably high salary. And they just drop everything and run. In another case, she says, she asks him, says, let me know, and Kirk says, those are beautiful words. There's even an author that's going to come from a star that's going to say that it's even more important than I love you. In another scene, she's talking about, they ask her about Kirk and Spock, and she said, where do they come from? Where do they belong? And she looks at Spock and she says, he should be by your side. And then she looks at Kirk and she says, I really don't know where you're from or where you belong. And in the end, what happens is either through a failure of her personality or a failure to be understood, because she's going to live. Like the point is that she's supposed to die. But because something happens with McCoy saving her life. Dr. McCoy saves her life, which changes history. And the Nazis win World War II. What happens because of her, there's a pacifist movement. It's not clear whether she's a pacifist or whether she's just misunderstood. I think they do portray her as a pacifist. And she winds up getting killed in a car accident. And then history is restored. But she's the type of person who really would have given up her life in order to prevent the horror of the Nazis actually succeeding. So as a result, that one is in a class of its own. You also have other romances. The Children Will Lead, again, which deals with first romance, virginity, pristine romance, okay, which is what gives it its beauty, gives it its power. Then another one, which is Mudd's Women. Now, Mudd's Women was really excellent, where again he's somewhat of a pimp. That comes across as disgusting to say it but it's quite humorous. You have all these beautiful girls, and you have like one girl who's, the gold digger type, kind of, but who has a lot of doubts about this, and they wind up tricking these rich miners into marrying them. And what happens is the reason that they're so beautiful is because, again, getting back to LSD, is they're taking something called the Venus drug. And the Venus drug makes people beautiful. It's illegal. Okay, but that's basically what he's peddling. So all of these girls, when the drug wears off, they become very ugly. And this girl, who's the protagonist, the heroine, she becomes very plain without the drug. And she marries the miner, and they're dilithium miners. It's very valuable fuel for the Enterprise. It's part of the plot, but she's a very devoted wife to him and a very good helpmate. But when the miner really does like her, he's in love with her, but he doesn't really know it. And when he sees that it's all a fraud, her beauty's a fraud, that he's going to reject her. He's going to be like the other minors who have the marriages annulled. And what they do is they give her what it seems to be the Venus drug, but it's a placebo. Yet this is what gives this one its strength, is that she becomes beautiful, and she says, "Is this what you want?" Okay, she says, vain, selfish, useless. Okay, and at that point he sees that there's more to relationships than skin-deep beauty, that there has to be some substance to them. This one was excellent because of that, as well as the love theme. However, it's not as good as City on the Edge of Forever, because although the heroine was very nice, okay, she wasn't quite the Sudeikis of the heroine Edith Keeler in City on the Edge of Forever. Thank you.